Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of The Smoking Room. This time we're gonna have an episode where first we'll start with Umineko spoilers and eventually we will possibly move into Higurashi spoilers too. If we do, we'll tell you. It depends on how much time we spend on the Umineko side. This episode's gonna be about the Higurashi world, more specifically the Higurashi meta world. We're gonna try to interpret it at first in the context of Umineko, and after that in the context of Higurashi, as backwards as that might sound. We're gonna try to address when exactly Bern was born, and what exactly is Lambda Delta. Anyway, I'm Des, and I am here with...
As Corey.
Kia ora, it's Horse Fry.
And Lurf.
Okay, let us, I guess, decide where we want to start. What do you think is gonna be the easiest thing to try to get into?
The bomb.
What Lambda is?
I feel so, because Lambda does come first, so it's kind of easy to segue into the creation of Lambda Delta and how that affected the creation of Bern.
I said only Umineko spoilers for the first part, but I guess it should be Umineko and Higurashi spoilers for this part too.
Yeah,
Very basic Higurashi spoilers, like the main 8/9.
Yeah, that works.
Yeah,
and then we can get into the side arcs, and I don't think any of us have Ciconia thoughts on that, but
No.
if we do, we
Well,
put that in
you want to
spoilers.
show Ciconia?
We do. I don't know.
Imagine having clear Ciconia thoughts.
Ciconia is in there too, I have to admit, but maybe we should just restrain ourselves.
We'll restrain ourselves, and if it comes up, we can kind of have a separate little section about it by around the end.
Okay, so let's discuss what Lady Lambda Delta, the Witch of Certainty, is exactly. So who wants to start? Who wants to open this kind of worms?
Well,
She's the bomb.
the bomb. True, I do agree with that, but also I've been thinking about Lambda Delta on a greater the whole of when they cry scale, and what she kind of means on a meta sense, because she is the quote unquote source of conflict in both Higurashi and Umineko, as in she is the guarantee of a tragedy, and that certainty.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel
so just to explain to listeners who aren't familiar with that, so basically this is the idea that Lambda Delta is a certainty that Beato... No, how did it go? Lambda Delta sponsors Beato's Witch of Certainty because the bomb will always go off. That's what ensures that it's the loops exist, aka that the story always ends in the same way, which is with the bomb going off and the tragedy happening. So Lambda Delta, the Witch of Certainty sponsoring Beato, is the metaphor for the certainty that that event will always happen and it will always end in the same way. So that's the way that Lambda Delta represents the certainty of the tragedy in Umineko. And then in Higurashi it's easier. It's just that Takano always wins until she doesn't, but we'll get into that.
Yeah,
that'll... Takano is sponsored by Lady Lambda Delta, hence getting her certainty. Which in the game board, I guess the explanation is just that Takano tries really hard, so she achieved certainty, just like Eva in EP3.
She also has a lot of guns.
Yeah, she's so determined and has plotted out her plan so perfectly that it is near impossible to defeat her. Therefore, it is certain that she wins unless a miracle happens, but we can get into Bern later. But I was thinking, because we have a kind of creator, so to speak, within the When They Cry lore, self-insert of Ryukishi 07, Featherine herself. And I was thinking, if we are going with our whole theory that we've concocted about Featherine authoring Higurashi, or that being a game that Featherine kind of created, I'm kind of wondering if Lambda Delta's origins might have also come from Featherine, as in she needed a conflict, and thus Lambda Delta was created and kind of always existed due to her nature.
Nice way to put it.
Yeah.
And I guess Bern Castell is always in one of the pivotal roles in the story, be it the protagonist or the antagonist.
Yeah.
Because of Umineko, both. In the case of Higurashi, the protagonist, which is also a part of the structure of the story that you do need for there to be a story.
And I think there's like a good like kind of idea where we don't know where Ciconia is going. I'm not going to say anything specific, but like if say like Lambda Delta is a part of it in the future, if that is possibly Lambda's origin, which we have no idea if it is or is not, Feathering kind of creating Lambda for the sake of a conflict in all of her works, leading into Lambda being the reason Bern Castell is created. It kind of has like a kind of like succession kind of thing where like Feathering is responsible for Lambda's creation because she created a certain conflict in her stories that, you know, required her villains or her tragedies to certainly happen so the story would take place. And then Lambda Delta's certainty drove Rika to a point where she was kind of able to ascend past the game board into witchhood and become the Witch of Miracles to overcome that certainty. And it's just kind of like a little like step by step, the little domino, if you will.
Yeah, which is funny to think about, because then you get to Umineko, and Lambda Delta and Bern are like there's no power dynamic there. They're in the same level of overpowered as shit, which is so it's funny to think about that. Thinking about it that way, yeah, Lambda led to the creation of Bern.
They're only overpowered because they're not in the story.
Yeah.
Yeah, like they had the whole rock paper scissors analogy, but we know that like
super paper.
Yeah, Lambda be super paper, but we know that Bern Castell was only able to be what was it? Was she the rock to Bern Castell's scissors? And she was only able to reach that level of power due to sponsorship from Lambda Delta. But if you think about like the rock paper scissors analogy, where like you're able to compare Bern Castell and Lambda Delta on that level, like, you know, like they're kind of in like the same area where they can compete with each other. But Feathering is still above both of them. She is the gun in rock paper scissors gun, which she immediately wins.
This is the same. This is the same metaphor that also has super paper. Don't forget. So you know, it's not the rock paper scissors that we're used to.
Because Lambda Delta can be super paper though, just means that she is just further proof of being on equal footing with Bern, because Bern might be able to cut her paper, but if Lambda is able to get the upper hand and become super paper, she could defeat Bern's scissors.
I'm going to be honest, I did not follow a single thing you just said.
It made sense to
me. Honestly, I respect the honesty.
I think the thrust of what Lurf was saying is like that they're like narrative devices of the author. So like,
yes,
you know, that they get slotted in, and like, you know, you can have a story that doesn't have certainty in it,
And
or
like,
you can have a story that has certainty in it that doesn't have Lambda Delta in it if you want to. They're like kind of metaphors, I guess, and like if you want to have those metaphors walk and talk and.
You know what? I actually disagree. I disagree that you can make a story without Lambda Delta, because that's why I was like, wow, when Worf was saying their thing about Lambda and Bern. Because, like, if they're both, like, aspects of a story, with Lambda being the conflict that needs to happen for there to be a story, and Bern being the sides that the characters take, be it the protagonist or the antagonist, you can't have a story without those two. Hence why at the end of each story they say, see you when something else cries, because you need those two aspects of a story for there to be a story, for something to cry, I guess.
It also makes sense with Feathering being an author, and also, I guess to a greater extent, Hanyu also being a representation of like the reader-author type character viewing the story. Just in terms of assigning them all literary roles. Sort of related and sort of an interpretation of that, Lambda is sort of like the fixed aspects of a story that are guaranteed to happen, the plot points that you know you want to include when you're writing, and Bern is the randomness that occurs when you let your characters explore those plot points and fuck around, and the
Exactly.
the random elements that occur in a story when that happens.
Like those are the surprises you get. Like the structure, but like, oh shit, how is this character gonna get out of this? Like I haven't thought of a solution to my thing, and then like suddenly you're just like struck with inspiration. You're like, oh shit, it's a miracle.
I'm not sure how sold I am on these ideas, but they're very interesting, to be honest, to think about the characters in that way.
I've always really enjoyed the idea that like miracles and certainty are like very loose concepts. So like if you really want like a particular favor, you could like equally ask either of them, because they just be like, oh, like yes, we'll just make it so it was certainly always going to work this way. Or you could go and ask Bern Costello, and she'd be like, yeah, I'll have a miracle happen for you.
Yeah, but I think the difference between them is...
It's not as simple as that. Because if it's Lambda Delta, like, you're going to have to work very hard to actually get that miracle. Like, the fantastical explanation is that Lambda Delta favors those who work hard, so she only brings certainty to those that work hard to get what they want. But then, like, the game board explanation is just, yeah, you worked so hard that you made it so...
Like, it happened anyway.
Yeah, it was as good as one already. And then with Bern Costello, like, the meta explanation is just that, yeah, she'll give you the miracle as long as you make it interesting. But then the game board explanation is just, you're just sitting on your ass hoping for something good to happen, which is what Rika does.
Yeah, it's kind of the difference between, passive, like, protagonist versus active protagonist, where, like, it kind of works with Battler, actually, because at the start, Battler isn't really trying, as we know in episode 5, because he thinks it's an impossible mystery, so he's just kind of hoping he'll land on something that'll stump Beato for him to win, and thus Bern Costello is rooting for him because he is suffering, and he is just like, like preying on the hope that like, oh, maybe there is a 19th person, or like I'll be able to just like defeat the witch and prove magic isn't real somehow, even though it feels impossible. And as he like actually like learns the truth and realizes it wasn't impossible, it kind of it changes around, and eventually like Lambda Delta ends up going on his side because he worked really hard, and it's continuing to work hard to like help Angie out. So, and like also obviously Rika was very passive and just like waiting for something to happen, and eventually Hanyu had to step in, which was a miracle because like, that was like incredibly unlikely for Hanyu to actually step up after all this time.
Yeah, and I feel like that's also a commentary on the readers, because as we know, the answer arcs of Umineko are very critic-esque of readers with the goats and all of those metaphors. So with Bern being a representation of passive readers and Lambda a representation of active readers, it just really aligns very well with the themes of Umineko, and hence why Lambda Delta feels compelled to actually aid Batur in the last stages of the story.
Okay, but all right. Counterpoint to all of this is that miracles also favor people who work hard, because that's how Bern became a witch. Was she just tried over and over and over until she finally got it? Like,
did Rika try though, or was she extremely pessimistic and was like, I don't know, it doesn't just seem like there's a point anymore. I'm just gonna suffer forever and drink wine. And
the only way that miracle would have happened was if she kept trying, which like is kind of like the ultimate version of hard work. Is like you don't think it's gonna happen, but you just keep trying anyway.
But was she willingly continuing to try, or was Hanyu resurrecting her without her consent, really? Because Hanyu's whole thing is she saved Rika the first time and has been trying to keep her alive, but it has been an impossible task, and then Rika has been stuck in these loops. And the only reason that Rika vaguely got a hope near the end is because the miracle of Keiichi remembering stuff, and suddenly just people starting to remember stuff out of nowhere, which caused no one worked hard for that. It just started happening because it just it went on for so long.
So what's your vision on this, Horsefly?
Counterpoint number 2 is that Lambda is a passive reader as well. That's the other thing I wanted to say. Lambda is the passive reader.
Lambda is the most active reader you could get, because she gets herself, like, Bern Castell, to interact with the story, she creates a piece.
Yeah.
Lambda Delta, she herself puts herself in the story. That's what she does at the end. That's why she has to fight Feather in herself. She's the most active reader you can get.
Yeah, because like Bern Castell plays the game in Umineko by first using Battler as a piece and then using Erica as a piece. And then eventually, when she wants to get the solution, she just kind of like reads everything. Like Bern Castell,
I guess that's true.
Goes on the wiki to confirm her answers, whether she's right or wrong. You know,
I think on the surface, at least, Bern definitely appears to be the active reader because she's trying to solve the mystery, and Lambda appears like the passive reader because she isn't trying to solve the mystery. She's just kind of like eating popcorn and laughing at everything.
Is she trying to solve the mystery, or is she trying to get other people to figure it out and tell her the solution because she's scared of looking stupid by saying the wrong answer so she can blame it on someone else?
You know, she wants something. She has a through line, so she pursues it. So, like, in that respect, she's an active character in the story, whereas Lambda is definitely a reactive character in the story. She doesn't, like, often try to do things. Yeah. Well, I guess she does do some stuff. Like,
until the end, yeah. Until the end.
I think I understand what you're trying to say, Horsefly. But, like, the thing is, Bern Castell is an active part of the story we read, but she isn't an active reader of the story that Sayo is trying to convey. That's why when she reaches an answer, like Natsuhi culprit theory, she doesn't scrutinize it and try to actually reach the truth of the story that she's reading. She's just content with the first answer that she found interesting.
She just wants to be marked correct.
Like, she isn't actively reading the story, she's just consuming it.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that.
She wants to have all of the correct answers based on facts. She doesn't care if it was the correct answer that, like, the test was looking for, you know?
Yeah. And another just, like, example of, like, Bern Castell not actually doing things herself is, like, recruiting Angie in to help Battler as her trump card. Like, Bern Castell's like, I'm not gonna, like, do it myself, but, like, you could probably help him. You could probably make this easier for me. Do me a favor.
I don't think she was doing it on purpose, because she was only able to put Eric into the game when Lambda was the game master. So I don't think using Butler and Angie as a proxy would be her preferred course of action. It's just that that's how she had to do it.
I mean, that was how she had to work, but it's still like, you know, like she didn't actively participate in this game, and she tried to hide the fact that like she was even involved from Beato, and meanwhile, like, you know, like, while like Bern Castell is just kind of being like, yeah, sure, Battler, I'll give you like vague advice so you'll like get back on your feet again, but I'm not gonna like actively do anything to help you solve this mystery. Meanwhile, Lambda Delta's like, all right, Beato, I'm gifting you power, and you're gonna beat Battler's ass, and then now you're dead, so I'll take over the game for you. Don't worry, I'll play in your place until you get better and stop pretending to be dead by not thinking.
Do you think... Well, never mind.
Okay. Horsefly, is there anything you're still not satisfied with?
I don't usually think of Bern and Lambda in these terms at all, like the certainty and miracles thing. I'm used to thinking of Bern and Lambda as being that Bern is like the internet, just because of the role she has in the story, like putting aside like miracles and certainty, whether she's an active or a passive reader. She's very much like what she wants and how she gets it is like very much, I feel, in Umineko specifically, is like about it's about like what the wider world, how the wider world engages with the Rokenjima massacre, not insiders of the Ushiromiya family. And I just straight up think like Lambda is like the bomb.
I mean, I agree with that point too. Like there's lots of ways to interpret them, and like I definitely do think that like Lambda being the bomb does kind of fit into the narrative theory, because, you know, like the certainty of it, which is like a key part of the story, but also like, you know, she is the certainty of death as in the bomb. And I do think that Bern being the manifestation of like how people are like kind of like reacting or engaging with the story to be pretty interesting on like kind of like if you look at the goats,
Yeah, they are on the same side.
This is how it fits into the meta theory, because the goats are all like not actively like understanding Beato's heart and like really digging into it, which implies that they're not active readers, so they're just like coming up with whatever theory that suits them, that they like the answer to, and not actually like bothering to check if it's the correct one, which is very similar to Bern Castell just accepting Erica's theory in episode 5.
Yeah. Well, now that we have already touched upon the subject of Lambda Delta inserting herself into the story to change the course of the narrative in EP8, we can try to interpret what actually happened in Higurashi. So I'll start with my interpretation, because I think that's like the generally accepted way to look at it, and then you can scrutinize it and, say your opinions. So the way I believe it happened is just that Lambda was pretty much played the same role as a witch as she did in Umineko, so she was up there in her meta world looking into this story happening, and then at the end she felt sorry for the characters, felt sympathy for them, and allowed them to win. So the certainty wavered, and Takano lost and Rika won. And this sympathy that she felt for the characters that allowed Rika to win is the reason why Lambda would look similar to Satoko. So she would look similar to Takano because she is directly connected to her and Takano is her piece, but then she also looks and acts similar to Satoko because, she likes this character, Rika. So she chooses to present herself as Rika's best friend, Satoko, to appeal to her. That's the way I look at it. So what do you guys think?
Honestly, I kind of like the Satsuka thing. Like, it's not like the same as my take, but I do think that's like an interesting idea that like, because like, Lambda Delta was like so smitten with this fictional character, was like so like kind of like enthusiastic about that she was like, I'm gonna look like your best friend. But I feel like given like the animosity, quote unquote, between Lambda and Bern, like the whole like I love you, I hate you, like we are lovers, enemies, friends, and everything in between kind of dynamic with them, I don't feel like Lambda was too happy to lose Higurashi. So I've always like kind of like gone like back and forth on like what could have possibly like made her falter, but given that we know how witches are with like, like predictability, I feel like after like 100 loops of winning and the fact that like her game partner Featherine kind of like dipped out, there was like maybe a moment where Lambda Delta's like, I'm kind of bored, like I'm gonna like leave the game board for a bit, like get a snack. And then she like turned back around and Rico won. And she was like, what the fuck? Who are you?
She goes to the kitchen to get some cookies, and out of nowhere the characters pop out of the screen and show up at her doorstep.
She's like, Takano can work hard without me for 2 seconds, and then she turns around and is like, what do you mean? Who are you? How did you beat my game? And Bern Costello's like, I just got here. I'm the Witch of Miracles. And they immediately started having a rivalry because Lambda was the one who trapped Rika / Bern Castell in her logic error loop of hell. And also like Bern feeling resentment towards Featherine for the same thing, like they're both responsible. And then Lambda Delta being like, ooh, I gotta beat this person, but also like maybe I kind of admire her, and she's also kind of cute. That's always been my take, mostly just because I find it very funny and it feels in character to me.
Yeah, I'm gonna try to find the exact line of how they describe the end of Higurashi in episode 1, Secretive Party, if I'm not mistaken. Or no, that's the second episode, because that's when Lambda shows up. Because I think there was a line with something to the effect of Bern Castell is telling Lambda that Lambda's power is usually better than hers, but then at the end of Higurashi, she just lost because she got bored or something. But I'm gonna look for the line itself. I found it. Stupid kid, can't you see you only won against me because of a little luck and a problem of compatibility? After that, you became such a brag, and now you're even picking a fight with Beatrice. Shouldn't you learn your place? So what do we think this problem of compatibility is?
I mean, I feel like the compatibility thing is like between the two of them.
As in, you're a beast and I'm a witch?
More as in like the miracle versus certainty, because like they can't exist without each other, but also like they directly like oppose each other at the same time, because like a miracle wouldn't be able to happen if it wasn't like defying like something that was like certain to happen, like against impossible odds, whereas the concept of like certainty like has no like meaning if nothing is certain and things just happen willy-nilly just because.
But at the end of the 4th episode, and I don't know if this is negation or if I'm just bringing it up because I thought of it, but they say the line about how certainly a miracle will not occur, and I think that's them. I don't know, I like the idea of them being very distinct, separate, but also they do come together at that point and combine certainty and
because I feel like they can work together, but they can also directly oppose each other, because like if a highly unlikely thing is certain to happen, then they're working together. But if like if they're opposing each other, it becomes a different story.
Bern usually exercises her power by not giving out miracles, so like in that way they are very compatible, because Lambda can make a very likely thing certain, and Bern can make a very unlikely thing impossible by refusing to give out a miracle.
So she's the lady of miracles, not because she gives out miracles, but because she gives them.
Yeah, that
was also.
I think
there's a line about that.
That is 100% Bern's character. Yeah,
she's the witch of miracles because she knows a miracle will never happen.
That's so funny.
Because she knows the unlikelihood of such a thing given her past experience, and she'll never be really like truly generous enough to like give out a good miracle.
I think they actually go into a lot of this into the witch's Tanabata side story.
Yeah,
if you're interested, Des. I don't know if you've read that.
Yes, I do know what happens. I know what you're talking about. I was gonna suggest, first I was gonna ask if everyone was satisfied with what we've discussed of what Lambda is exactly, and if we want to move into trying to reach a consensus on when Bern Castell was born as more than what she was in Higurashi.
I guess on the topic of compatibility, like just coming back to the super paper discussion, I always took that as like the trope is called meta forgotten. So on tvtropes.com, which is a terrible place, you should never go because you'll get trapped there for all eternity like Bern. There's a trope called meta forgotten, which I think is a really good name for it. But like it's basically where you go like, this thing is like when you do this other thing, but except it's not anything like that, because you're like
what?
I can't think of an example right now, but it's a kind of humorous trope where like you're giving a metaphor, but then you forget about the metaphor because you're like, oh, but there's all these exceptions. I better talk about all these exceptions as well, and then like and then you get lost in the weeds of like
driving a car is a lot like riding a bike. Well, except for the fact that it's electric, and also you have to put gasoline in. Also, a car is a little bit more expensive. Yeah, something like that.
Okay.
There you go.
Yeah, I feel like that kind of summarizes their relationship.
The metaphor gets forgotten. Like Lambda Delta is trying to explain things in a really simple way, but then it's actually really complicated, so she like forgets, and the metaphor gets lost because what the hell is super paper? Like I always took that as like they have some kind of relationship, but it is not like an actual rock paper scissors relationship. It's way more complicated than that, and like which probably just means it depends on the story. Like in some stories, Lambda is more powerful because there's a lot of certainty, and in some stories, Bern's more powerful because there's a lot of miracles, and they like
yeah.
And however exactly their power works is like kind of ambiguous, which is like, I think a good thing, because it gives Ryukishi a lot of flexibility to decide what kind of role they'll play in what story.
All right, that's interesting.
No, I totally agree with that. The whole like, yeah, she's the scissors to my paper, but sometimes I'm like super paper and I can defeat her scissors is very much in line with what you're saying there. And in terms of compatibility, because you just reminded me, the fact that they can be extremely compatible, but also extremely incompatible, just really speaks to their like very like contradictory relationship with each other. You know, like the whole like love hate back and forth with them, where they're you know, enemies to lovers and then lovers to enemies and then they're besties and then you know, like it just like it constantly like flip-flops with them. They like flirt by threatening each other. Like it's all very contradictory with them, which is fun, but also they can easily just like work together and get along and like snuggle. So it just like that constant like switch up of like what their dynamic is really speaks to their powers and how they complement and don't complement each other.
Yeah, no, this conversation finally gave me an explanation that I'm satisfied with for the super paper line, because like it just being the fact that the whole weapon triangle thing metaphor is just not encompassing of all the little details and little asterisks that come with their power dynamic. So then just a super paper is just one of the exceptions of the metaphors, a situation where the metaphor doesn't apply. I really like that. Thank you.
Yeah.
So should we move into trying to figure out Bern's birth? When did Ikuko I actually don't know the expression in English.
Like the cat, like
yeah, when did Ikuko adopt her cat? Let's discuss.
like when the
I mean, that's the thing, right?
Yes. And then Lambda is allegedly a cake. I don't remember if that's backed up by text or if that's just a global headcanon of the fandom.
I've never heard that.
I know some people, rather than the cake, put her as like the candy. That is like both used in like the episode 2 Tea Party, but also like, you know, like the candy Maria brings, because it's like the little like Halloween pumpkin marshmallow lollipop thing. And Lambda Delta's got that little pumpkin on her shirt.
But that's still in the story.
Yeah.
Whereas the cat is outside the story.
I could definitely picture Ikuko just eating cake as she's brainstorming and be like, what could I use as a theme for the visuals of this character? Damn, this cake's kind of good. Eureka.
Erica.
Actually, I do think the idea that Lambda Delta has like direct like things you can like point out in Umineko, like as in like on the game board and be like, oh, she could be the candy, she could be the bomb, is really interesting, where Bern Castell remains a kind of intangible force where she's not like directly in the story but influencing it outside of it, where, you know, Lambda's an active part of the story, whereas Bern Castell exists outside of it, only like interacting with it through proxy.
Well, not really. Rika uses so many cat metaphors.
Oh, I'm talking about in Umineko specifically, because it reflects their characters' like kind of roles and how they go about things. But Higurashi's a different beast, because that was, you know, Rika's logic error, which led to the birth of Bern via Rika.
Oh, it really illustrates how like complicated these characters are. Like, it almost feels like trying to say, hey, let's pinpoint when Bern was born, is a bit like trying to say, you know, I don't know, let's pinpoint the exact moment that the Earth formed. It's like, was that when all the rocks like slammed into each other at the birth of the solar system? Was that when like the clouds of gas started coalescing, like, you know, 30 seconds after the Big Bang? Like, There's so many moments where you could be like, all right, now it's the Earth, but like there's a lot of things that come together to make this like one big whole. And like for Bern, it's like, yeah, like there's a real life cat named Bern Castell in the story, and like it's, you know, it's not even all that much more complicated than that. It's like, you know, the author wrote a character named after her cat because her cat's a total dick.
And her cat was probably named after a wine.
Yeah, so there's the wine angle. There's like, you know, there's the angle that connects it to Rika. There's the angle that connects it to what she does in the story, which is like what I was saying earlier. Like, just her actions in the story connect her to something else within just the story of Umineko. But if you start to go beyond the story of Umineko, you know, some of those work really well, like the Rika angle. Some of them don't, like the cat and the the public / internet angle kind of fall away if you're going to compare it to.
Well, okay, here's kind of my idea with that, because if you kind of look at like Higurashi, and I might get a little into Ciconia-Kuroshi, but not much. I feel like the moment Bern Castell like was truly like born as a witch with power was when, you know, Rika won the game, when the miracle happened. But like it's kind of similar to how Battler was, you know, a player on like the meta thing, but he didn't become the Golden Sorcerer until he solved Beato's game and thus won. You know, like, you know, the promotion to becoming a witch. But I feel like Bern Castell didn't truly separate from Rika and become her own concept until Saiga Hiroshi Hen, where Rika decides to abandon the witch side of herself, which allowed Bern to kind of like become a concept in Featherine's other works.
Yes, I agree.
Which like separates Bern from the Rika character.
I agree, because then from that point onward, Gameboard Rika goes on living her life, just choosing to live as a normal person, to try to forget all this thing that she went through, because she doesn't want to move on as that bitter person that went through so much hell. She wants to move on as a regular person, so she abandons her witch side. So metaphorically, Bern Castell gets separated from Rika, and so metaphorically, Bern Castell is ripped off of her happy ending that she worked so hard to achieve, and that's why she's so bitter about it.
Like, Rika can be happy now, and Bern can go on to make other people miserable. Because she's a being filled with spite.
My one thought is, I guess this is more focused on the Higurashi side of things, but I just keep thinking of the entity that is speaking in the beginning of Matsuri Bayashi, and when you're playing the connecting fragments part.
Like the poems?
Like the poems, but also like the voice that is constructing the final fragment in Arc 8. Like, it's not Rika, because Rika doesn't have memories of that when she wakes up in the arc.
Featherine!
It can't be Featherine, because Featherine's the writer.
That's true.
If we go by the idea that Toya is, by metaphorically, Hanyu, because he's the outsider who gets to step in and solve everything because he wants the characters to win in Matsuri Bayashi, then if you want to stretch it to Umineko, you can say that's Toya's voice upon discovering the story that Ikuko was writing and then abandoned, and then he wanted the characters to live on happily ever after, so he wrote Matsuri Bayashi. Which is a stretch, but it fits.
How does Battler solve everything? He kind of like makes everything worse before he even starts to make things better.
What do you mean?
Battler merely by his presence starts off the whole. I mean, you know, it's just the straw that breaks the camel's back. But his sin is still his sin. But then even after he leaves and he's like Toya, he spends some of his time. You know, I think we know that Banquet was just Ikuko, but like some of these other episodes that he writes with Ikuko are like, you know, kind of just antagonistic, make things worse for Ava and Angie and.
Oh, but he doesn't have to write Matsuri Bayashi as he's still going through his journey. It could just Matsuri Bayashi.
Oh, I see what you mean.
Have been written like many years into the future after the whole thing with Umineko ended.
He wants to solve everything in Higurashi. I see.
But then Bern's in Higurashi though.
Time doesn't matter. Time does not matter.
Time's an illusion, because I guess in the story of Higurashi, it takes place 3 years before Umineko, so therefore Bern can exist in it, and it's possible that Bern existed as a character based off of Rika, because Feathering just liked the concept of her so much and likes the idea of her being bitter, and then Toyo was like, okay, so like what if we like leaned into this a little? And then she
Feathering fetishizing another mass disaster.
Yeah. But if it actually... Yeah.
Toya, wake up. It's 3 a.m. Time for us to overcomplicate a very simple real-life event.
By the way, I have my biggest brain idea right now in my head, and I need you all to hear it, because I have solved a question I asked earlier.
Drop it.
So, when Bern Castell leaves, you know, when Rika lets go of Bern Castell in Hiroshi and Bern Castell gets to go off and be her own thing, that is when Featherine adopts her cat and names it Bern Castell.
What?
She is no longer in the fiction. She has left the narrative and is free to just like exist in like Featherine's like little home, her little writing area, and influence the story.
Oh my god! Oh my god! That actually kind of makes sense. I kind of like it.
Like it's silly, but I kind of like the idea.
Sometimes you gotta make a silly theory.
Like my episode 5 theory.
I have to admit that it is a fragility of this whole theory, how much we're messing with the timeline, and how this whole thing is sustained on time doesn't really matter. That doesn't matter in the meta world. But to be fair,
but it doesn't.
We can just say that Matsuri Bayashi was written not many years in the future, and it was just Toya wanting to like sympathizing with the characters and wanting to write a nice ending for them, even if he was writing horrible things about the Shinomiya family. On the other side, in that scenario, the Feather in adopting her cat coinciding with the end of the Higurashi script wouldn't.
If time doesn't matter, what if?
This is a dangerous way to start a conversation.
Hear me out now. This is stupid. I don't know if I buy this, but it's just an idea that came in my mind.
I'm ready for Ciconia to be included.
No, I'm not including Ciconia in this. I'm not. But what if? And hear me out here. At least in universe, Umineko was written first, and then Higurashi was written as a prequel for the origin story of Bern Castell.
I think technically it was because Oishi and Akasaka in the future do write a story called Higurashi. I'm pretty sure in the future of Himatsubushi.
Wait, and then that makes sense because Battler references the Higurashi story, which might be the one that Oishi wrote, and then maybe because we know that Featherine is canon fanfic writer.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Of stories that occur, like the message bottles, she expanded upon the Higurashi story that Oishi wrote.
Bro, wait a minute. You know how you can top this even more? If that is true and Higurashi was written after Umineko, then we can go along with the idea that Higurashi and the fact that it loops and it's a story about friendship that never ends because it just keeps looping. If that is an insight into how Ikuko could be feeling after Toya moved on from her and she was feeling lonely, and then the fact that Hanyu is visually similar to Featherin could be an indicator that Hanyu calling out to Awao is Featherin calling out to Toya, who just left.
Her other half.
And he misses her. And then it all starts piecing together.
And that's why Hanyu's incomplete and has a missing horn, because Hanyu is not like fully feathery because she's missing Toya.
And then Toya comes back and finishes her story for her.
Oh my god.
Allowing the horn to heal.
And they can still be friends even though they moved on, which leads into Go Satsu.
No.
When Satoko...
Not I this is the second time that we record an episode we start going into thin foil head theories and they actually start making sense.
Oh my god.
That's, I think, how you're supposed to read Higurashi. Like, Umineko is based on concrete theories, rational logic, thinking things out. And Higurashi is based on what batshit theory can you make up to explain?
It's based on bullshit. Fucking alien ghost parasites created by demons or whatever.
So what you're saying is that we can finally answer the question of what I believe, if memory serves me right, was the first smoking room, what you should read first. And we have now established that Umineko should come first. Thank you, everyone.
This has just been holding on to that for like 2 years.
I was dying alone on this hill, not anymore.
I still think that you ruined the first tea party.
Yeah, I mean, like, I feel like if you do read Umineko first, you can kind of see the first, like, the tea party with Bern Castell and the Nipa just being, like, a silly reference, like not knowing the stories are connected, and then you see the Bern Castell poems and you're like, wait a minute, and then it becomes like a little mystery about like Bern Castell's involvement in Higurashi.
Yeah, like there's lots of perfectly valid reasons to read Umineko first. Like you can read whichever you feel like it, I think is the answer.
I think you should read Ciconia first.
Yeah, Ciconia
I think
first.
you should read Higambana.
I think you should read Rose Guns Days first, because it comes comes first if you take into account the years that the stories take place in.
Isn't Rose Gum Days in an alternate universe anyway?
But the years don't matter because time doesn't matter.
Oh, that's true.
The real moral of when this is that you can read Ryukishi's works in any order and you're valid.
Yes, you start with Umineko EP5, then Higurashi EP3, then season 4 of Rose Guns Days.
Start with Jiro and the answer arcs, then work backwards.
And don't forget about Go.
True.
You watch episode 3, 4, and 7 of Higurashi Go.
It's just like watching Haruhi, honestly. Just to broadcast
So
her.
true. Where's the Haruhi smoking room? When are we doing that?
I've been asking this for so long.
Well, just fucking do it. You have the freedom to.
I can record an episode without Des in it? No way. I have the power. I can make my own episode.
You make it sound like I'm a dictator.
Let's go. Next week, Haruhi smoking room.
Focusing in a little bit, how do we want to...
So we've covered what one day is. We've covered feathering giving birth. Let's move on to what is like the meta layers of the Higurashi meta world. Who's in them? What's happening? I think, of course, you have the game board layer where Rika is. And then you have pseudo meta layer, let's call it that, where Rika and Hanyu pop up in when they are jumping between the loops. But it's kind of like a fake meta layer. And the actual meta layer is where Lambda and feathering would be.
I'd argue also that is where, in the last Higurashi arc, where you're viewing all of the different fragments in the one interactive part of gameplay.
You think that's in the upper meta world? I think it's in the lower one.
Because it's putting the different fragments together to make a new fragment. And I feel like in the lower meta world, at least Rika and Hanyu don't seem to be able to like directly control the fragments like with authorial intent like that.
Did I miss something? Why is there an upper and a lower meta world? Like, why are we in agreement about that?
Because there's the meta world where like Lambda, Bern, and Beto and Battler all have their game, and then there's like the meta world where like Feathering wrote the story, and that's like a different layer of meta.
And in Higurashi, there's the fact that Rika and Hanyu both are meta-aware characters who are aware that it's looping, but then there also is the scenes that take place in which you are viewing all of the different fragments in EP8 to construct Matsuri Bayashi's world from the meta world, which is not something that Rika and Hanyu are shown to be able to do.
What if that's Toya? Like working stuff out and like brainstorming.
Yeah, that's what I think. But Horsefly, yeah. The thing is that when we're in EP8 constructing the fragments, yeah, I don't know. I'm not gonna add anything to it, as Cody explained it pretty well. So what are you not happy about, Horsefly?
Oh, I just never even thought that there would be two meta worlds. Like, I always thought Rika and Hanyu were constructing the story, but probably not actually, because they don't know about Takano until they figure it out, right? But like, can't that just happen like somewhere else in the meta world? Doesn't have to be another layer. Because
here's the thing: in the fragments, you get to read all of these things about Takano's backstory. Because like by that point, they do know Takano is the villain, right? But they don't know all these things about Takano's backstory, and it would be weird if they somehow out of nowhere started having the power to just construct a backstory for Takano, to then be able to construct a new fragment. Because like Hanyu doesn't have the power to construct new fragments. She just pops Rika into a new one that already exists. She doesn't make them.
And Rika is not aware even. Rika doesn't remember that Minogoroshi happened, much less the meta world of fragments in between the two worlds. The last thing she remembers is Keiichi and Rena fighting on the roof.
So you're basically going through that part of the story as an outsider, through an outside perspective, which would have to be an upper layer above that of Hanyu and Bern Castell, simply because we have more information than they do. Does that make sense?
Kind of. I'm still trying to remember how this whole thing was framed. I'm sure I remember like there being dialogue between Rika and Hanyu, like right before you go into the connecting fragments, that implies that they're like that they're doing this as well with you.
I'll go check that right now.
I think she says like, I am Rika, but I'm not the Rika.
Yeah.
Oh my god, this rabbit! I completely forgot about this fucking shit. So how do we feel about that line? Is there an even upper Rika?
That's what's been confusing me.
I feel like it's maybe like Peace Rika versus Rika like on the fragment layer, but it's kind of like I don't know, because like Rika like takes over like the body of like the previous Rika, so I kind of see it as like her taking control of the piece and like moving it directly. But because she's Rika, it's always in character, so like she could just do whatever.
Yeah, but then that would mean that this is the same meta world that she and Hanyu inhabit. This is a Rika that's more aware than the Rika we see interacting with Hanyu in between the loops, which would mean.
Is it like the start of Bern Castell?
It's not, but it is.
Like Bern Castell before she becomes Bern Castell, like proto Bern Castell.
I get the feeling, that this is just because what this upper layer Rika, the role that she's doing is basically the same as Meta Butler looking into the story and looking at his own movements, but with more information because he's on an upper layer. I feel like this is just Ryukishi exploring the same dynamics that he would later explore in Umineko, except he hadn't fully developed that idea yet. What does that mean? There is an upper meta world Rika who is, I guess, communicating with Lambda Delta herself as they play through this game, just like Butler and Beato are.
Unless that upper world person is like Featherine, who is constructing the story.
And she's saying like, I'm Featherine because I'm Rika because she's putting herself in the shoes of Rika and trying to figure out the story through her perspective, try to figure out what she could do.
I'm completely lost.
Let me look that up. I'm gonna open the LP archive.
Maybe all of these characters are just extensions. I'm also losing my brain.
Yeah.
I think it's a combination of exhaustion and the fact that Higurashi and Umineko's connections make no sense.
Well, I cannot open the LP archive because it started being paid again. I don't know why it fluctuates between being paid and being free.
I have a login.
You do?
I have a login. I can send you the information another time.
Well, then should we put a pin on this? And maybe we can make another smoking room addressing this?
Yeah.
Question mark?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
I need more time to think about this, gather my thoughts. I haven't had enough of Red Bull to be thinking on a higher plane of existence like that.
So true. But I'd love to hear like what other people think, if anyone who usually has really good, interesting comment theories.
Please do comment your theories. I wanna know the general consensus.
Okay.
What people think.
Then let's put a pin on it. Nay, a stake. Let's put a stake on it.
Yeah,
And
on the first Twilight. I'm sorry, on the fourth Twilight, stake the theory.
Stake the inconsistencies between Higurashi and Umineko.
We're gonna have 10 Twilights of thinking about. Imagine 10 Twilights of thinking about the meta layers.
God.
Okay, so now we're gonna get into trying to understand Higurashi's meta world through a Higurashi perspective, which, believe it or not, is even harder than through an Umineko perspective, because in Umineko you have 8 episodes to become accustomed to the mechanics, and then in Higurashi you have one side arc. Let's move into that. If you haven't read the Higurashi, you wouldn't be here, so...
Well, I mean...
I guess there's no more spoiler warnings to give. Just Kotohogushi spoiler warnings.
Yeah, the side arcs, yeah.
And
all the side arcs.
yeah, Kotohogushi spoiler warning for sure. Saikoroshi spoiler warning maybe, question mark. Kamikashimashi spoiler warning probably not, until further notice. And I believe that's all. If you haven't read Kotohogushi and you don't care about spoilers, fear not, because I made a PowerPoint to catch up everyone. So I'm gonna start sharing my screen.
Let's see this. I've been waiting in anticipation.
I can't promise I'm gonna understand or process all of it, but I am ready to learn.
I'll try my best.
Welcome to Higurashi class.
Yes. So this is not a Kotohogushi hand summary. This is a compilation of the lore drops and the ridiculous astronomical amount of retcons that it brings.
Yeah, jeez. This is probably the stupidest thing I've ever read, I have to admit. Like, I only read like the first like 2 videos from on Lambda Delto's channel. I am reeling.
It's that bad.
Yes, I completely understand the sentiment. Yeah, last disclaimer I want to give is that this is a compilation made by me, not Ryukishi himself. So this is just this is my, I don't want to call it interpretation, because I made my best to not put in interpretations. I did my best to not put in theories, to keep it to what is stated in the story. But of course, it's not like I can claim to have a full understanding of Tohoku Shihen. So even though I try to keep it to just facts, there's always going to be a layer of interpretation of me trying to understand what the story is telling me. But I tried my best. So here we go. All of Koto Higuchi is basically taking that one line in Tsumihoroba Shihen when Rena mentions that, or someone else mentions that one of Takano's journals basically explains the curse through sci-fi elements, and that it actually all comes from aliens. So in this arc, we learn, quote unquote, that Hanyu is an alien who's from an alien race called the Ryun. And back then, many years ago, Hanyu used to go by the name Yasumu. I'm not sure if I will be able to maintain that pronunciation constant, because that's a really hard name to pronounce. Yasumu. And these Ryun, these aliens, they have different clans, and the Jeddah clan is just one of them. They are also called the Observers, but we'll get into that later. And these Ryun have a very specific characteristic, which is that they can revive unless killed by a sword of the Jeddah. What reviving actually entails, we'll get into later, because this is the same sword that in Go and Sotsu is claimed to be able to kill a looper.
My god, really?
Yes, it's the Onigari no Ryo. Another characteristic of the Ryun is that they can hop between dimensions using something called a control gate, which is an invention by another one of the clans of the Ryun, which is called the Linos clan. So up until now, basically, Ryun are the aliens. They have clans. One of them is the Jeddah, which is the one that Hanyu belonged to when she went by the name Yasumu. And there's another one called the Linos, who created the control gates that enables them to hop between dimensions. Here's the stupidest diagram I've ever done.
Oh god. This again, the Battler fetus.
Battler fetus.
I set that to my Discord banner.
Is it actually?
Yeah, go check.
I'm glad you did that for me, because I do not have Nitro.
It's very important to me.
So, this Ryun, they used to live in another dimension, but then they were forced to come to Earth because their dimension was dying. They were supposed to make it die faster. And so, they had to figure out a way to move to another dimension, hence why the Linos clan created the control gate. The destruction of their home dimension progressed faster than they expected, so the Ryun rushed to these control gates, which overloaded them, and there was an error, which made it so most of the Ryun, on the process of hopping between dimensions, they lost their body. So many of the Ryun, when they came to the dimension Earth is in, they were basically just memories and personalities. They did not have a body. And so now we get to the first name drops, not the first name drops, but like the first classifications that we need to understand. A Ryun that has not lost their body, they're called Putush, or Putus, depending on pronunciation. I don't know. I have no fucking idea. And if they have lost their body and are just personalities and memories, they're called Griffish. And so because these Griffish, they are just memories and personalities, they cannot sustain these memories and personalities forever. They cannot sustain themselves forever because they do not have a body. And so as they lose power, since they are losing personality and memories, they start growing young, because you gather memories and you develop your personality as you grow old. So if you start losing those, you start growing young. That's how they work. And that is fucking why Hanyu looks younger than she looks here in this arc.
Oh my god.
Because she started losing some of her personality and memory?
Yes,
Exactly.
But that's for a different reason. That's not because she lost her body, it's because at the end of the arc, her horns get chipped. But we'll get into that later. The solution they found to this problem would be to assimilate into bodies on Earth. And so they found that the human race was the most rational race to assimilate into, and they start started assimilating. Except there was a problem. These humans, they already had memories and personalities, so the original memories and personalities clashed with the new ones, and they started developing what we now call L5. Except this was super L5. So it wasn't just a mental transformation, it was also a physical one. People would mutate, their muscles would grow, their fangs and their claws would grow too, their body would become hard, and they would become vicious.
Yeah.
And like this was an actual demonification. And so the problem with assimilating into people was that they had memories and personalities, they decide, okay, then let's just assimilate into fetuses, because they have no memories as far as we know, and they also have no personalities as far as we also know, and that really helped it, because even though they would lose most of their memories and personalities assimilating into a fetus, at least they would not
Go L5.
yes, they would never go L5, because there just would be no clash of personalities.
Okay.
And that's why I used Butler's sprite for this, because in Umineko no one goes L5, while in Higurashi they do. So the explanation for this would be that the people in Hinamizawa, and to an extent Tokinomiya, and those people are descendants of people who got assimilated by a Ryun when they were already adults, while people who simply do not have the ability to go L5 are people who descend from Ryun who assimilated into a fetus. Is that making sense up until now?
No, but yes.
Yeah.
Surprisingly, yes.
It is making sense. You are making
I
sense.
understand the chart.
This is not making sense.
The chart makes sense. Ryukishi has a lot to answer for.
Like, I understand, but what the fuck, you know?
Yeah. What Lurf said. I just have a quick sequitur. Was the swamp an interdimensional gate?
The swamp is just a regular place in Hinamizawa, at the time called Onigafuchi. It's just that Yasumu was seen for the first time in the swamp, and so the legend around it became that.
Is that what that CG is?
Yes.
Oh
Yes.
god. Oh god.
That is what that cursed CG is. It's the anime trope of, oh no, you found me as I was taking a bath, you hentai. Yes, that is exactly what that CG is.
Kind of disappointed the swamp isn't a gate,
Oh my
because I
God.
feel like that would make sense with like getting the Hinamizawa syndrome from the water,
Yeah.
because it's just like accidental assimilation, because people who lost their bodies just in the swamp.
The fact that it's bottomless just because it goes to another planet.
Would you believe me if I told you that we have already seen the gate?
Is it the shrine?
It is not the shrine. It is not the shrine. You'll never believe where it is that we that we see the gate, but we'll get into that.
School bathroom.
It's what's it called? The sluice that Mion puts Riki in Go. It's not. But yes, the last thing we have to explore on this slide is up in the corner where it says Ryun clan equals High Ryun equals Putus. I only put that there for the sake of this being an extensive diagram. We will later actually get into what a High Ryun is and what the Ryun clan is. For now, you just need to know that on one side you have Putus, on the other side you have Griffiths. So moving on, let's talk precisely about that. I completely forgot this was the next slide. Well done, Past Death, for organizing the slides correctly in a way that falls nicely into it. So these Ryun who were able to be transported and retain their bodies, they felt like they were guilty of the absolute madness that their brethren were causing on Earth by assimilating into non-fetuses. So they felt like it was their duty to solve this problem that they caused. And so they formed the Ryun clan. Yeah, Ryun clan is just Putush who take it upon themselves to fix the mistake that they caused, basically.
So it's like the square and rectangle thing, where all Ryun clan members are Putus, but not all Putus are Ryun clan members.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
So the Ryun clan consists of 16 families of Putush, and they are called the High Ryun.
So is Ryun clan and High Ryun just the same thing, but...
Yes, these two are
Okay.
interchangeable, yes. And so as this Jeddah clan is, or family is, one of the 16, And each of these families would have a different role in dealing with the Griffish. So the Jeddah clan were originally called the Observers because their role in this plan to fix their mistake would be to monitor Griffish activity. But then, due to an event that I will get into on the next slide, Griffish activity increased, and Putus were already very low in numbers, so they had to take desperate measures, and the Jeddah clan's role went from being simple observers to becoming executioners. And what this entails is that they would start preemptively hunting Griffish who started undergoing demonization, as opposed to only fighting them once they had demonized. Like people who would start developing L5 symptoms, Jeddah would just materialize before them and fucking kill them, essentially. And I didn't know where else to put this, but Putus can still demonify. The only difference is that they don't go crazy, and they obviously retain their full memories and personalities because they have not assimilated into anything. And they also have the ability to freely transition between a physical and astral bodies, which starts drawing some really interesting parallels between, meta world and game boards. We can discuss that at the end. I believe it will be very interesting. So let's get into that event that I told you made Griffish activity increase. So what happened is that there was a global pandemic, which obviously affected infants in a much more severe way than it affected adults. And so Griffish would start assimilating into adult people again, because they had higher survival rates, which led to an increase of people with conflict between personalities, which led to an increase of Hinamizawa syndrome, which led to an increase of demonified Griffish. Hence why the plan changed, and the Jeddah became executioners. Any questions up until now, class?
Now I'm really confused about Hinamizawa syndrome in the context of, the main Higurashi.
Because it manifests itself differently. There's no physical mutation like it happens in here.
Do all of them just have demons inside of them?
Here's the thing. I kind of lied. I actually have two theories at the end, but they're separate from this info dump that I'm giving you. I call them hypotheses because they're not complete theories. They're just kind of like lore bits, I guess, just ideas to throw into the air so that we can try to come together and make sense of it. So yes, hold on to that, and let's all try to make sense of Kotohugushi at the end. I think we can at least try to understand it somewhat if we all come together. Because I'll be honest, I fucking couldn't on my own. I simply could not. It's so weird. So let's just define what a demonified Griffish is. So it is a physical and mental transformation. People in this state have a fast regeneration, and they are impervious to most attacks. Now let's talk about the Onigari no Ryo, the sword that is a very major plot point in Go and Sotsu, and also the only sword that is able to kill Hanyu, aka Yasumu, at the end of Kotohugushi. So to do that, first let's go back to the control gate that was used to transport Ryun from their homeworld to the world that Earth is in. It was created by the Linus clan of the Ryun, and it is described as an autonomous data aggregation, which makes no grammatical sense. It feels like there should be a word after autonomous data aggregation, like should be autonomous data aggregation program or an autonomous data aggregation software or something. Probably just the translation being funky.
Yeah, the noun version is aggregate. Yeah. Weird.
Yeah, probably just the translation being funky, but it does get the point across. It is also described as a super integrated circuit made up of several operators, and the avatar that controls this whole thing is called Ryun-ok. And to be honest, to me, this all just feels like AI internet, because what does it mean that there's several operations and this is just like a data aggregation? It's just the internet, but then you put the autonomous word behind it and the fact that there's an avatar for it, and it's just AI internet. It's just like Siri, I guess. Yeah, so now we get into the alterations that Yasumu did to this Ryun-ok. which is that she altered her so that she would observe both Yasumu herself and the activity of Griffiths. Yeah, Griffiths. She also trained her, which again taps into the AI theme. She trained her to speak in a manner that Yasumu found to be to her, like, that she liked. I don't know why I'm trying to put it so formal. And she also developed her to have the voice of a small child. She also communicates telepathically with Yasumu, and this Ryun-ok exists within Yasumu's sword, the Onigari no Ryo, which also enables her to repair the sword. Ryun-ok is just straight up able to repair Yasumu's sword no matter what. And again, this sword has the power to just disable revival. That's why this is the only thing that could possibly kill a Ryun. Any other attempts at killing a Ryun will just have them revive. With the Onigari no Ryo, they'll just die.
Does that include descendants of the Ryun? Because, like, you said that everyone in Hinamizawa is a descendant of the Ryun.
I don't believe so. You know what? No, I'm not gonna try to explain it, because like it would just be me doing theories. So I'm just gonna say I don't know. I just don't know. I don't think I have enough of an understanding to give a concrete answer to that. We can explore the idea though, but yeah, I'm not gonna say concretely one thing or the other. But yes, let's bring up all of that at the end. So that I can give you all the information you need to like start developing your theories and your ideas, because I want you to have all of the information. So yes, actually, I should have trained this more. There's no more facts. That's what the slide says. Now I'm gonna get into the hypotheses that I think are likely, but I couldn't come up with a conclusion to, and let's just start, discussing, I guess is what I'm trying to get at. So my first hypothesis is that revival equals looping, because in Kotokugishi Hen the sword is described to be able to stop revival, and then in Goen Sotu it's described to be able to stop looping. So the first conclusion that comes to mind is, okay, then revival is the same as looping. Then you have this line in the story that supports that idea, which says, this is when Yasumu is killing another Putus. She says, thus you shall recall all the mistakes you made up until this point, then suffer and agonize as you spend time lamenting your existence and your sins. And it wouldn't really make sense to say that to someone who you're gonna kill, like, I'm gonna kill you and now you're gonna just spend time thinking about your mistakes. Like, that doesn't make sense. People die when they are killed, as Shiro would have you know. So what to me that would mean is that you're just separating the link between the bodiless Ryun, aka these memories and personality. You're separating them from their body in the game board. So they would, when you strike them with the Onigari no Ryo, you would kill the body and the memories and personality would shoot up to the meta world, and they would be permanently impeded from coming back and assimilating into another body, hence why they would spend eternity thinking about their mistakes. And so to scrutinize this idea, I started trying to figure out, okay, then can Griffiths do it or only Putus? What do I mean by this?
I think...
I know what this means now. Because Griffiths are Ryun without a body, and Putus are Ryun with a body. I worded it wrong, it should have been the other way around. Can Putus also separate their bodies from their memories and personalities and just go up into the meta world and then come back into another body? Or can only Griffiths do that, since they already didn't have a body? And so the first example of that, we have the chief at the start of the arc, which is a Putus. If Yasumu is telling them to go spend their eternity in meta world without being able to come back to the game board, that must mean that, yes, Putus... No, wait, that doesn't make sense. I'm so sorry, guys.
I don't think you need to apologize. I think Rikishi. Did Rikishi write this? Like, or was it a console arc writer?
It was a console.
many arcs were many arcs of the console arcs were not written by Ryukishi. I'm not sure if this is one of them or not. Okay, but like let's forget about the chief because I don't remember what my point was with that. But regarding Satoko,
I was just gonna say, if only Pushas could do it, they'd all be dead, right? Because they'd die of old age, and then their body would be destroyed, and then if they continue to exist, they would be Griffiths. Isn't Pushas like they kept their bodies? So if they lose their bodies, then they're not Pushas anymore.
If they die by any regular weapon, they can just keep reviving unless they are killed by the Onigari no Ryo.
It was not written by Rikishi.
Yeah, because that's what happens at the end of Koto Higuchi. Yaosumu or Hanyu's daughter kills her, but then she comes back with the sword and tells her, "This is the only sword that can kill me. Please kill me with it." So yes, that's the only thing that you can. That's the only way to kill them. What I was gonna say is Satoko would be a Griffish, so if she was struck by the sword, that would have been what would happen. Like she would lose her connection, her capability of going back to the game board, and she would be stuck in Meta World, which in Go there's a whole plot point of killing a looper with a sword. But then in Koto Higuchi Hen, what you see the sword do is just severing the connection between the personality and memories with the body so that they would not be able to come back down into a body. But then what if that was true, then Satoko would just be stuck on the meta world and not be able to come back to her body and keep looping. So you wouldn't exactly be killing a looper in the sense that you would erase their existence and they would just die as a meta existence. You would just be killing a looper in the sense that they would be unable to keep looping, which doesn't make sense when you think about Rika in Go, because Rika killing herself with the swords, what she wanted to do it because what that would do is it would erase her existence as a meta entity, which is not what would happen if she killed herself with the sword. If we're going by how things work in Koto Higuchi, she would just be permanently a meta existence like Bern Castello is.
Yeah, it's the exact opposite.
Which is not what she wants with the sword. It's not what Hanyu told her would happen. So there's contradictions here between what happens in Koto Higuchi when you kill someone with a sword and what happens in Go and Sotsu when you kill someone with a sword. So that's the problem with this theory. You could work around that by saying that Rika is an exception because she's the descendant of Oka, who is a descendant from a Putush, who did retain their whole body, so they could be an exception. But then in that sense, Satoko could also be an exception because she's being sponsored by Elwa, and who knows what that means? Who knows what Elwa is? I don't. I have no fucking idea.
Supposedly Ryukishi, but does he? I think it would be really interesting if the sword killing you means you ascend to being a looper. That was the theory I had when Go was originally airing, that like if you got killed by the sword, that was what caused you to become a meta entity.
That's kind of interesting. Honestly, that would be kind of interesting if like that is part of what happened to because like we know Takano in a lot of loops often sneaks into the shrine. So is it possible in a loop she decided to possibly perform the Watanagashi ritual with Rika with the sword? Then I guess Rika would recognize the sword. But actually, no, she wouldn't because she wouldn't remember.
I was saying remembering the loops is a different situation than becoming a meta entity. Meta entity is like going beyond to Bern Castell, like ascending to Bern, I'd say.
All right.
Or not. You become a looper. When Go was airing, one of my theories, this is reminding me of, is that I thought they were going to connect Bern and Lambda to Satoko and Rika by having them both kill themselves with the sword, leaving Satoko and Rika personalities down, but their meta selves ascending.
Yeah, that's supported by what happens in Koto Higuchi.
And this is just reminding me of that.
Yeah, you just get stuck in the meta world as meta entities, and that would be how Bern would be born. That does make sense. Is that what you were trying to go for? Did I understand that right?
Yeah, that's what the theory was.
Yeah, I like that. That makes sense. The problem then just becomes, okay, but then Lambda already existed, so who did Satoko become? Or, chotomate. Wait, could I, you could say that, and this is just me inventing, of course, this is very stupid, but when Satoko became a meta-only entity by getting killed with a sword in that idea, that would be what would make Lambda gain her Satoko characteristics. She would just merge with the Lambda that already existed. For some reason, no, this is very stupid. Forget I said anything.
Because blondes stick together.
I was actually thinking, like a kind of like deterministic point of view in which the idea that Lambda Delta would exist was a certainty. So Lambda has always existed, but that's the moment she was born.
That's her logic
which
error.
Could be kind of interesting, in just like a sense, like I wasn't thinking logic error, but that could be it. But I was kind of like thinking of maybe it's because I got Homestuck on the brain recently, but I was thinking like it was always meant to happen this way. Therefore, Lambda has always existed, but there had to be a moment where she was created. And when she was created, it's kind of like a last Thursday or somewhere. It was always the case.
I mean, I guess, like we say, the meta world exists outside of time, right? So that makes it very easy to say that, Lambda can exist in the past, but be created in the future.
Yeah, because if you end up going to like the Feathering author theory as well, like if you invent a character and then you like have the lore of the character being like, oh, like an ancient being who is like worshipped by people who are like asked for certainty to be gifted to them, then technically Lambda has always existed in like the lower meta / like game board universe, whereas like Feathering had to create the idea of Lambda Delta to begin with.
I mean, to be clear, if we're using authorship theory, then my theory is that this is all fan fiction and it's not real. I put my fingers in my ears like la 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 la.
I deem it non-canon.
I mean, that is your right as a reader.
Yeah.
I was gonna say there's still a problem with that though. We still have the problem of Rika seeing getting killed as a sword as a good thing, which I don't think she would find being permanently stuck on the meta world as a good thing.
Would it be capable of like separating the Griffiths part from the Rika part? So the Rika part goes back and lives her life, and Griffiths becomes Bern Castell?
Well, it would end the loops, at least in my theory.
It would end her suffering, but she still wouldn't go back to her previous life.
I think Rika
isn't a Griffish though. Rika is neither a Griffish or a Putus. She's just a descendant of Farion, which I have no fucking idea how that works, but it's not the same.
So maybe the sword would work differently on her?
Ah.
That is a possibility, because like Hanyu was killed by the sword, right?
Oh, you mean that Hanyu?
Or
okay.
Am I mistaken?
I thought you were mentioning going. I was like, I don't think Hanyu dies.
Because like didn't like she ask her daughter to like kill her after like going on a little rampage?
She wins against Ewa. Okay, yeah, she did get killed by the Onigari Noriwo.
Okay, but her spirit still kind of like existed, was able to like visit Rika and stuff, and Hanyu still like existed on the meta world. So like it could be a thing of like a separation, like. But
you want to know another fucking contradiction with that? Because this all makes a lot of sense. But then you think about Matsuri Bayashi, where she comes back again. She comes back again as a physical body. So she wasn't permanently stuck in the meta.
Oh my god. I truly sometimes don't believe Matsuri Bayashi is real.
So, I mean, that maybe because she can have a physical body still, but also like be with like Rika in a meta sense is kind of like, like a meta self separation from game board self, and the sword allowed her to be able to do stuff like that. I don't know.
Like, you could still go with the idea that Hanyu Matsuri Bayashi is just a mass hallucination.
Well, I mean, if we take... going back to the authorship theory, like, I've always thought that... I mean, I've talked before about how my theory about Higurashi is that it's written by Akasaka and Oishi, and, like, not by Ikuko and Toya. And, like, I've always imagined, like, the answer arcs as being, like, a what would it take for a good ending. It being an exploration of those two authors, which would just mean, like, let's just insert another character and a bit of divine intervention, and hey, look, everything worked.
But that's the Doylean explanation. What about the Watsonian? That's the problem here.
They wrote Matsuri Bayashi, it got really popular. People were like, yeah, but why was Hanyu able to come back? And they're like, well, shit. And then they quickly wrote this. Yeah, was it Koto?
I mean, I think
Kotohogushi.
Kotohogushi. Yeah. They got really drunk and they wrote Kotohogushi.
Wait, was it? Do you know what the story behind Kamikaze Mashi is? How it got written?
Oh, I don't know the story behind why it got written, but I know the general premise.
Hiroyuki got very drunk at a bar once with a friend, and they wrote the whole plot of Kamikaze Mashi, which explains a lot.
It does explain a lot. But what was I saying? I guess like Hanyu's, because I always well, not always, but like I vaguely imagine that Hanyu's presence is because Takano like speaks to Hanyu and like sees her like physical form existing, and we also know from the ending that Takano did end up contracting Hinamizawa syndrome, and we know that people with L5 were able to be able to sense Hanyu, but Hanyu wasn't actively like trying to like really like interfere. She was just kind of like muttering apologies and like walking around and talking to Rika. But I feel like if Hanyu was actively trying to communicate with people with Hinamizawa syndrome, they'd be able to actually like maybe interact with her because of the whole
okay, I'm liking
alien ghost parasite brain thing and her connection to that. So like she's there, but can like really only like interact with people who have Hinamizawa syndrome, because like that's her like connection to the world now is through her alien ghost bullshit.
Well, in Matsuri Bayashi, she does.
Not to throw another wrench in, but does Hanyu ever interact with Okanogi?
Okanogi, yeah.
I don't think so.
She does?
Because they have the big battle.
Oh, fuck.
No, not Oishi, Okanogi.
Okay, if you're living or like staying a while in Hinamizawa, it's possible that you just like get Hinamizawa syndrome just like from being around there, because like Kiichi got it after moving there shortly. And I don't think I don't know if everyone knows like where it comes from. They're just like kind of studying it and trying to make a biochemical weapon with it, if I remember right. So, I mean, it is possible he has it, but he just never like got to the point of L5 paranoia, because I mean, like the first like couple stages of Hinamizawa syndrome are just like you're kind of vibing. Like nothing really changes. It just like it's like laying dormant until like the paranoia starts stirring up, and then it starts like making you get to extreme heights and become violent when you get to like L4 and then the deadly stage L5.
Does that also mean that like in Matsuri Bayashi, Chie was like paranoid AF when she was introducing Hanyu to the class?
I think that's what I think. I think every appearance of Hanyu is just mass hallucination.
Well, I don't think it's not paranoia. It's just a connection to the alien ghost spirits in their brains that Hanyu is able to like connect with. So like if Hanyu were to interact with someone who has not been around Hinamizawa and has not contracted the syndrome, they wouldn't be able to sense her. But like you don't have to reach full levels of paranoia. I just think the higher the level of L5, like higher level Hinamizawa syndrome that you get, the more like the parasite is like affecting your brain, and thus you are able to like kind of sense Hanyu without like Hanyu like trying to get you to sense her. It's just like, oh, you're kind of reaching like a level of awareness that you normally wouldn't, because Hanyu's just like trying to be a little ghost and not really like actively do anything and except like be like, ow, 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 Rika, please don't die anymore. But when like Hanyu decides to become an active part, she's like, okay, I'm not like, like I'm an active participant and you guys can sense me. I'm hacking into the alien brain parasite. I'm letting you, like, I'm communicating with that bullshit. through whatever means.
Yeah, this would only work on descendants of people who got assimilated into as adults, not on people who got assimilated into as infants, because they would, yeah. So like it comes down to like if Butler went to Hinamizawa, he would just not perceive Hanyu.
Yeah, because like Hanyu can only connect with like people who just got assimilated, I guess, or like got assimilated later in life when there's like the conflict, because it's like part like alien parasite in there and then part real person. I feel like the clashing of the two might cause the violence and paranoia, because there's like something wrong with their brain, but they can't like figure out what it is. They just feel like they're going crazy, and then they just start distrusting everyone around them. But if Hanyu's able to just kind of like talk to her old alien ghost buddies or whatever, that might be why they can perceive her.
Like when we talk about brain parasites, like in the main arcs, they're talked about as being like basically like amoeba, like single-celled kind of bacteria, like organisms with like a very strange life cycle. How does that like tie in at all to assimilation? Like, are the aliens amoeba?
No, because listen, it makes sense. It makes sense. Listen to me.
Okay.
Because if you lose, the more memories and personality that you use, the younger you become. So if you like lose everything, you regress down to like first like cell, like single cell organism, like just become as like minimal as possible.
Oh my god.
That makes so much fucking sense.
I'm so big brain. The Red Bull's kicking in, buddies.
This is so stupid.
Well, on that note, on the note of memories, I want to show you the second and last hypothesis, because I just started connecting many dots and they led me to nowhere, but I'm positive that you'll help me make some sense out of it. We know that the memories are their power, and if they start losing memory, they start regressing to a previous point in their life. So, if you lose memories, it is like a self-time travel, because you're going back to a previous stage of your life. So, let's go back to plot points in original Higurashi. Hanyu's whooping power decreases, so we could say that Hanyu's memory decreases throughout Higurashi. So what happens is that she remembers less and less, if we're going by this understanding. So if she remembers less and less as Higurashi goes on, that would explain why there's less and why she can only whoop Rika less and less back in time, because she wouldn't remember as much to be able to send her that back in time. And we could even go as far as to say that her memories also get muddier and muddier, and that would be why there are alterations in the event each time they loop. It's not because it's a different timeline, it's because Hanyu just doesn't remember it as well.
Oh god.
Did Rena go L5 or was it Mion? I think it was Satoko.
Hey yo.
Hanyu authorship theory.
Hanyu author. This is how we can salvage Hanyu equals Toya. And then after Matsuri Bayashi, Hanyu just remembered nothing. That's the whole plot point. This is the last arc that Hanyu has enough whooping power to actually send Rika back in time. And she's only able to send her back in time 1 week. And then after this arc, there'll just be no more whooping power. She'll just remember nothing. And if she remembers nothing, there will be nowhere to move Rika back to. And this is when it's inconsequential, but I want to connect this dot with Umineko. Because try to remember the shape you used to have, and that's how you reverse the vase to a previous point in time where it was intact.
Oh, because you like evolve instead of de-evolving because you forgot what you were like, and then when you remember what you were like, you can grow back.
Yes, you go back to a previous point in time in yourself.
Thematically, in Umineko, once you stop thinking, you die, but if you start thinking again, you come to life. It's sort of like death is only as long as you thinking or not remembering.
Well, while I do think that Hanyu is a piece of feathering, it is possible for this to make sense in the Hanyu is like actually feathering, in which like feathering in like Higurashi timeline got like damaged somehow, lost like memories, aka the horn break, and eventually in regaining the memories and like getting her little memory device, she grew into Big Featherine because she knows so much now because she's like a creator and a very powerful witch and knows all of the events of every story and can even influence them. Which could make whatever happened in Gosatsu make sense on a Higurashi level with like Hanyu and Ewa's relationship.
Yeah.
And like the whole like deal where like I'm pretty sure at the end of Satsu like Hanyu like chips like Featherine's like memory device or like does it and then like Ewa becomes like small.
Yes. Hold that thought.
Yeah.
Destiny.
yes. Hold that thought because look at this shit. It's exactly what you're talking about. So what happens at the end of Satsu is that Hanyu, some fucking how, I don't remember if we see it happen. I tried to look for it, but I couldn't find it. Some fucking how, at the end of Satsu, she has her horn restored, and she's able to summon a completely restored Onigari no Ryo. This is how we connect Hanyu to Featherine. Featherine has this funny little disc that contains all her memories, and at the end of Satsu, she gets the disc chipped. And when she gets the disc chipped, she reverts back to a child. It starts all making sense because the disc has the memories. She loses memories, so she reverts back to a previous point in time in her personal life. So she reverts back to a child. That's how it starts making sense. And now let's go back to Hanyu. She has her horn restored, meaning she has regained her memories, meaning she can finally summon a completed Onigari no Ryo. She has finally access to her full powers again, and that's how she summons a sword that was otherwise broken.
I have two theories right now, and one of which is kind of that they're all insane. I don't know why I need to preface this because the very premise we're basing this off of is insane. But okay, theory one: Hanyu and Ewa/Featherine are not the same people. Like they're from the same like alien race, but like Featherine like ascended to like a higher meta level before like shit went down, and she has her memory device, so she's never like de-aged. And maybe her and Hanyu knew each other, and like Featherine abandoned her, hence like the calling out of the ow ow. And the reason that like we see the similarities between them is because they are the same kind of like being, but they're not like the same person. Because when Hanyu gets her memories back and like her horn is fixed, she doesn't like become Featherine. Like she doesn't reach that level.
Yeah, you know what? That makes sense. That makes sense with Kamikashimashi, because in Kamikashimashi we are introduced to Tamura Hime no Mikoto, who is also like on the same level of Hanyu, so you could probably correctly infer that she's also from the Hairyun, which means she's also from one of the 16 families. And the shared design element they have is that one has wings and the other has horns. They're even called the leaders from the Nation of Wings and Nation of Horns, respectively. And fucking Featherine also has a thing on her head, so she could also be from one of the 16 families, but different from the Nation of Horns and the Nation of Wings. So that does support your claim. Kamikashimashi supports your theory.
Yeah, because when a memory thing is broken, it's not like Ewa becomes smaller Hanyu. So that actually makes sense in my brain, surprisingly. But
my God, I can't believe we saw.
I gotta say my stupid theory, which I don't believe, but I thought it was really funny, in which Hanyu has a separate little time loop thing going on, where basically, let's say. Let's start at the beginning of Higurashi. Higurashi happens. We go into Gosotsu. Ewa shows up, and Hanyu regains her horn and breaks Ewa's horn. Ewa reverts back to a child or like a smaller-ish form with less memories, goes back in time, becomes Hanyu, and it's like a forever loop of like becoming like the full like being, and eventually the Hanyu who has our memories here becomes Ewa, and it's just her life is a big loop.
What the hell? That's So
which is very
colorful.
stupid. It's very convoluted. But
I think that was a lot of people. I mean, I think for people who haven't read Umineko, if you're watching Go and Sotsu, that is, I think, what you're supposed to take away, because you don't know who Feathering is.
yeah, it could be a big loop. I also think that, like, Ewa just being another, little, like family, like, from a different family who, like, ended up doing something different. Because, like, Feathering's, like, whole deal, I keep calling her Feathering when she's Ewa, but, like, you know what I mean. Ewa's whole deal in Go Satsu is just like, yeah, I'm here to watch, the Griffiths, do their little thing and fight. I'm just observing. Like, maybe she never, went to executioner status. Maybe she was just like, yeah, I'm just gonna, like, fuck off and watch and observe. And I'm not gonna actually step in.
So they gained their horns when they went from observers to executioners then?
Either that, or do they just have, like, different, like, traits from different families? Because you said, there's another family that has wings instead of horns.
Yeah, but the observers were the Jeddas. They
I
just
see. Well,
swapped to executioners. But the observers were always the Jeddah,
yeah, that makes sense.
who are the nation of the horns.
It is also... actually, no, because we saw in the manga that the memory device does float around the head. But, like, yeah, I don't know. I feel like she could just, like, modify her horns, or at least just, like, got the ring instead, because of just, like, the different paths she took. Or, the horns, like, maybe memory device fused to head become horns.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. If you have a floating memory device around your head that looks like horns, and I don't know, your memories enter your brain, maybe the memory device just becomes horns, and it just, like, it goes, like, through the skull, and that's what you have instead of a brain.
What did you just say?
This is... Oh my fucking god, this is how Irie proves his theory that lobotomy is good.
Maybe the Red Bull isn't working, guys.
Yeah.
Or maybe I'm just stupid.
Hey, Irie, can I get one of those lobotomy things? Kind of need one right now.
As much as I'm liking all of this, first of all, I just want to say this is where I can tell you where we see the control gate. When Ewa turns back to baby, she transforms into Data and goes back to a big whirlpool. So that's most likely than not the control gate. And also I just wanted to rain on everyone's parade, including mine, because there's also some things that don't work with this. Which is that at the end of Sotsu, Hanyu destroys all the fragments, both the ones in Go Sotsu but also the ones in the main arcs. And that's how she wins, because she's destroying all the memories, so there's nowhere to back to. Which, if she's destroying the memories, Rika and Satoku should wake up back in their game board without remembering nothing. That's how the loops get disabled, supposedly. But then in Go and Sotsu, at the end of Sotsu, I mean, we see them with the red eyes, so it doesn't work. And also, most importantly than that, if looping equals memories, and the loops are just Hanyu's memories, then does that mean that every Ryun can just create their micro-universe? Because if so, then what the fuck is going on that fight at the start of Kageboushi when she's fighting a fellow Putus?
Well, they're traveling to different universes. Like, it's not like the same like universe, but like of Hanyu's own making. Like they hop from like one possibility to the next, trying to find a fragment or universe in which stuff actually works out, which they can hop through because they have the gate powers. Maybe.
But in that case, it would be alternate realities and not Hanyu's memory.
No, I think Lurf is saying the truth case of like what the series actually is, and Des is talking about Des's theory. I think Lurf is saying what actually is in Higurashi, and you're talking about your theory, Des.
Maybe there can only be one. There can only be one fragment where the corrupted Putus fights Yasumo, and they're fighting over who gets to author it. And then Yasumo is like, "It's too late. I have already drawn you as the soy white Wojak and me as the."
I feel like I learned a lot, and I also know less.
Yeah.
I understand so much and so little at the same time.
Yeah, for sure.
You became aware of how much you don't know. We all did.
I just need to process this, and then I think I can discuss it, you know?
No, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I also thought. I didn't think we would like actually be able to reach a conclusion about this like we did in many of the things we discussed in Umineko, but I thought we could still have a meaningful discussion about it. Take the first step into trying to understand what the fuck is going on in Higurashi.
All we have to do, all we ever do is just continually try to figure out what the fuck Ryakishi was on about.
Look, if he's gonna keep releasing Higurashi stuff, we're gonna keep thinking about it. If he wants us to think about other stuff, he should release Ciconia.
That's exactly what I was gonna say.
I keep thinking, like, can you imagine if he released Ciconia Phase 2 and it starts with a monologue about how the Putus have finally reawakened or something, and like the Three Kings are like, finally the Jeddah clan will rise again.
Oh my god.
I'm just saying, there are worse things than Ciconia Phase 2 being put on hiatus again.
I would take it. I'm desperate.
I don't know. I think I'd take it. I'd take being more confused over not having nothing.
Which is the great thing about Bern and Lambda, right? It's like there's pretty much any angle that you want to take in the story. There's an angle that supports that. If you want to think about Bern as being, you know, an influence on the author, Ikuko, then there's the cat idea. If you want to think about Bern as like an agent in the story, then there's my internet theory that probably is not mine, but and if you want to think about like connections with Higurashi, there's like an overarching meta world you can kind of start to construct. And if you really want to think about Koto Hogushi, you can do that. And you can construct theories about that.
Yeah, I definitely feel like it's one of those things where, like, I feel like almost every theory that, like, people can come up with about, like, Bern and Lambda and, like, Ewa feathering, like kind of, like, place in, like, the greater narrative is pretty valid, because I feel like there isn't really supposed to be one answer. They're supposed to be fulfilling multiple different ideas and concepts at once, which, you know, makes a lot of sense.
And in a way, are we not creating fragments of Lambda and Bern's history when we talk about the possibilities?
What a poet.
I think we figured out something really wonderful here today. I feel like we've grown as people.
Maybe the real Bern and Lambda are the brain rot we got along the way.
We all got brainworms. We all got that Hinamizawa syndrome.
We all got brainworms.
Tune in next time when I go L5 and kill everyone in this Discord call.
I'll be scratching my throat out.
Gotta have like a Hinamizawa syndrome episode.
Oh my god, I got so many more Hinamizawa syndrome thoughts by reading Koto Hogushi. But that's gonna have to be left for another time.
Smoking room? I'd love that. I'd love a smoking room on Hinamizawa.
We should do that. We never did the Queen Carrier debate.
Let's do it. Hinamizawa syndrome and Queen Carrier fight. Where we all...
My god, who would win? Coughing Baby versus Hydrogen Bomb?
Versus, would Higurashi be better if Hinamizawa syndrome didn't exist at all?
What? Did it just be a completely normal slice of life dating, Vian?
No, like, maybe it was just like a normal, like, mental illness. I don't know.
Without L5.
No aliens.
Yeah, and not like a supernatural mental illness.
Yeah.
Like, what if it was just paranoia?
Yeah. Without L5, the village is able to link up with, communist revolutionaries across Japan, and we have a completely different history of the world. They're able to organize effectively without murdering each other.
Oh my god. And then that's how World War III starts.
Yeah, well, yeah, Ciconia. It's Ciconia.
It's talking. They make their weapon. They start World War III, and then that's how Ciconia happens.
Yeah.
Oh my god. I think we're approaching L6. So, anybody have any other big war drops they want to drop? Or should we close the episode?
I think I'm good to close.
I have nothing more.
Alright, well, with that said, dear viewer, we hope you enjoyed this ride that you took you on throughout different dimensions with use of a control gate. We hope you weren't too confused with the all these different terms being thrown around, because to be honest, it probably gets confusing with all these terms. But yeah, hope you enjoyed it. Comment your own ideas, because we really are in need of more ideas to actually complete a theory.
Hopefully this episode got y'all thinking.
So yeah, well, see you on the...
In the Haruhi secret tea party.
Smoking room about Hinamizawa syndrome and the Queen Carrier debate, if we do ever end up doing that.
See you at the Haruhi,
and the Haruhi
secret tea party as well.
Bye-bye.
Kakite.
Alright, well,
Bye.
see ya.